Welcome back to Pig's Ear Interview here at the Tojo Dojo, one of the only places we're talking about what we've been playing and what we've been watching. I'm Myshtuff, joined by Riku Rose. How you doing today?
Good man, how are you?
Good, good. So before we get into things, I had told you I have a fun story for you, and I want to get your opinion on something. And for anyone watching, I didn't prep him on this, so I'm going to get an actual reaction here live. So the
Okay.
other day, I once again made shepherd's pie, as I told you. I made it
Oh,
once
okay.
before, so I made it a second time. I think I followed some of your advice of like how to place some of the mashed potatoes on there and like kind of structure it, more the foundation sound.
Yeah.
And shepherd's pie, classic British dish from how I understand it, right?
Made with real
So
shepherd.
yeah, exactly. Well, okay. Well, quick question though. Mine was a vegetarian version. I don't know if that's like sacrilege or not, but
Yeah, yeah. Like the Queen's gonna fucking come get you.
yeah, I'm not allowed to enter the country if I ever want to visit on vacation. So, okay, so I got that right, and I have some leftovers, but I haven't
Okay.
eaten it yet. I'm gonna have some for lunch today. But here's the thing: yesterday I also had Buffalo Wild Wings, and I have leftovers from that. So I'm gonna be combining the two into a Buffalo Wild Wing shepherd's pie.
That's like the most British thing meeting the most American thing ever.
Exactly.
This is like the food version of Fleetwood Mac.
Exactly. And I'm like, at first, I'm kind of like disgusted by it, and I haven't tried it yet, so this could go awry very quickly. But just for your reaction, how does that hit your ears? Taking this classic British dish and classic, I don't know if I'd call it classic America, but a traditional.
I'm not the biggest shepherd's pie fan.
Okay, all right, fair
Yeah,
enough.
so honestly, it doesn't sound that appealing to me. I'm not a big mashed potato fan. I find it too bland and a bit too boring.
Got it,
And I
got it.
just find it gets in the way of the meat.
See, for me, I do like some of those flavors, but granted, I did season it fairly well, and there's other stuff that I put in it as well. But okay, I'm going to let you know how this goes afterwards, and this could potentially be the start of a great new trend here in America: shepherd pie and Buffalo Wild Wings coming together.
I don't think the CEO is going to be answering your call with Buffalo Wild Wings
All right,
anytime soon.
it's all right. It'll go viral. This video will go viral. I'll do a review on the next one. I'll let you know how it goes.
That's the thing that puts us in like the
Yeah.
YouTube top 100. Yeah.
Exactly. This is our breakout moment right here. We need to embrace this. We're actually going to turn into a cooking channel after this. But, anyways, so given that, we're going to be talking about a video game, Rollerdrome, that I've been playing, and then a show that you've been watching, Only Murders in the Building.
Hmm.
So, with that, I'll just go right into Rollerdrome. So, let me pitch you an idea here. Tell me how this hits your ears. What
Okay.
if what if I were to tell you there's a game out there that combines Tony Hawk, Max Payne,
Hmm.
Jet Set Radio, and then a little dash of Rollerball starring James Caan from 1975?
I
How would that hit
love
your ears?
I love 3 out of 4 of those things, and I've
Hmm.
not watched the last one.
So, okay. But that is essentially what this game is.
Yeah.
And so, for anyone who doesn't know what any of those things are, I guess I'll break it down a little bit. So, this game actually was announced kind of out of nowhere, or at least for me it was, because I think it was like 2 or 3 months ago on like one of PlayStation's, state of play, I think conferences or whatever. But I played it on PC, but I think maybe it's available on Xbox as well. I can't remember, but modern consoles and PC basically. So it's an indie studio that has made a couple of other games that I think have been popular, and I think there were also like some skating kind of games, but not quite to this level. But they seem to have done these types of almost arcadey sports sort of games. So I guess once I found that out, I wasn't surprised that they went on to make like another arcade sports type of game. But what's interesting about this, though, the premise essentially is you're in an arena and you're on rollerblades. It's cell shaded graphics, and then you also have guns, and you're basically fighting waves of enemies. But I guess the kind of hook of it, I suppose, is well, there's a few hooks, I guess, but one is why I said Max Payne is you can kind of go into that bullet time sort of mode where you're doing tricks, and you can pause it, and then you can start shooting the enemies, and different weapons will take out different enemies, but then you also have to do different tricks, like in Tony Hawk or like even Jet Set Radio, technically, to
Hmm.
gain your ammo back as well. Like, so you don't really pick up ammo; you have to get it back by doing like tricks and grinding and stuff like that. Which I was like,
Okay.
okay. So it's kind of
Yeah.
the game is sort of like forcing you to go into a flow where you're always basically moving. Like I think you saw me playing it the other day on stream when I sort of finished it, and I was like dodging left and right and like freaking going nuts, basically.
Yeah. There's a very fine line in games between making like it look easy and play easy, but still be
Hmm.
fun.
Hmm.
Because like I remember the Assassin's Creed games, all I did was like counter and kill,
Yeah,
and that got pretty boring after a while
yeah.
because it just felt like I was holding like one button and pressing another, and that was it. And it didn't
Hmm.
feel skillful, and after a while, it stops looking cool.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, you play something like Tony Hawk, and even a simple button press can just make it look awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the other thing too, is you can do different types of tricks. Like there's button inputs to do different things, and it kind of encourages you to try different ones to get like a higher score and all that sort of stuff. And also, like Tony Hawk, each level has different objectives to meet. So like the
Hmm.
bare minimum that you have to do is just survive and kill all the enemies, but you can also get certain scores or certain little collectibles or beat certain enemies with certain guns. And so it encourages you to experiment and kind of try different things,
Like a
but
high
also,
score type of thing.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And once again, kind of like Tony Hawk, there are like tiers of levels. So to get to the next kind of tier of levels, you have to do a certain amount of those objectives. So you can't just do the bare minimum every single time and beat it. You actually have to go back and play some of those levels, which encourages you, to keep playing it, past levels and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And the reason though why I say the movie Rollerball. So I don't know. Have you ever seen the movie Rollerball or
No,
no?
no.
So I would say, as a quick side tangent mini review of that movie, great movie. Basically, the whole point of it is James Caan, and this is like a couple years after Godfather, by the way, where he was, becoming more famous. Very different role than Sonny Corleone in The Godfather, but he's got that kind of macho sort of look, and he's basically this star player in this roller derby kind of like international league. But it's not just them on rollerblades kind of throwing a ball into a goal. There's also motorcycles there, and they're like beating the shit out of each other. People are getting set on fire. Like it's supposed to be the most brutal game ever. And then there's also this backstory of about political upheaval, and like he's trying to get recruited. Like it gets really weird. So it's it's yeah.
So it's like a serious version of Dodgeball, the movie, like cross with the Running Man.
That's a pretty adequate, I think, description of what this movie could be. But just yeah, so the movie is ridiculous just because, like I said, it has all those goofy, like the game itself is the focus of the movie, and then you have this weird political upheaval in the background, and James Caan is being forced to retire by some shady like corporate CEO, and this weird retrofuturism. Like it's an absurd movie. Even if you don't care about this game, I would highly recommend to watch Rollerball, which actually I think got a remake in the early 2000s, which I've not watched, and I'm sure is
Huh?
absolutely terrible because they probably took it way too seriously. But maybe one of these days I'll
Wait,
watch it. But
you're telling me it's not a serious like premise?
yeah, yeah, believe it or not, uh, they could have a little bit of fun with this. I mean, they do kind of take it seriously in the original one too, but it's just like you watch it and you're like, what the fuck is this movie? It's just ridiculous. So great movie if you ever want to watch something really goofy. But anyways, so some of the reason why I mention it though, obviously there's the roller derby aspect of that movie, which they kind of brought in. But the other weird part of this game too is they kind of try and introduce a story. Or I shouldn't say that's weird, but I don't really think it was necessary, but like there's parts in between those tiers of levels where you do like a quick, like it's literally 20 seconds, or you can stay in there as long as you want, I guess, where you're like in this first person view and you're like exploring a locker room, and you can read like newspapers of like the political upheaval that's apparently going on outside of this roller derby.
So there is some kind of like story to it then.
Yeah, there is. Like essentially the story, like the character you play, had to like give up her life savings to enter this tournament, and she's trying to like win it all back for the championship, or like if she wins the overall tournament, she'll get a bunch of money. But then, yeah, like you get little clues from the stuff that's laying around, like a locker room, or I think you can do there's another one where you're on a train for a little bit. And you're, yeah, like reading these newspapers or little tape cassette recordings of things like civil unrest, and I'm like, all right, I don't really know if that's needed, but whatever.
I mean, if I was a dictator, the way I'd control my like underlings is a giant rollerblading gun battle.
hmm Yeah, it's an interesting backdrop, I guess, but I mean, it doesn't detract from the game. And even asks if you want, you can just skip it, so it's not like it
Yeah.
really matters all that much. But it's just a neat little thing they included. But yeah, the main focus of the game is of course the gameplay where you're just going around skating, shooting shit, and there's a couple of actual bosses as well, which are like kind of a big mechanical sort of spider tank looking thing. I want to say there's maybe around nine, or well, there's around like 9 or 10 stages, but I think even some of those are reused or just slight alterations on previous ones, but with
Mm.
like new enemies coming and different arrangements and stuff like that. So you definitely won't be bored for sure, even if some of the levels start to maybe a little bit blend together. But
Is
yeah,
this something
once
that you think you're going to be playing like on and off still for like a couple of years, or is this one of those I've got my fill and I'm moving on?
So I think the answer is yes. I mean, obviously, time will tell, but I do intend to. And so the way that the game works is once you beat the main story, which I think took me, I don't know, 5 hours probably,
Okay,
maybe
that's a
six.
decent for an small indie game.
Yeah, I mean, I had to retry a decent amount of times for the later couple levels, but yeah, you can beat it relatively quick. But once you beat the main campaign, it actually unlocks another follow-up campaign. All it is just the same levels over again, but it's essentially a hard mode is really all it is, and it just amps everything up. And like for example, when you play it the first time, the enemies usually come in waves, and this hard mode, they're just all there at once, and that's what in addition to doing more damage and stuff like that. So it's really just the
Hmm.
same game, but on a hard mode. So I do want to go back and try it. I haven't had a chance to, other than maybe a couple minutes, and then I died within 20 seconds, and I'm like, well, I'll come back to this maybe a little bit later. Um, but I would say the answer is yes, because like I still go back and play Tony Hawk and Jet Set Radio because those are like those fun kind of drop in, drop out games. Like you can play a level for a
Close to
couple
like being an
minutes.
arm. They're like homecade, aren't they? Really? Like,
Yeah, and that's where like I love those types of games. I wish there were more games like this, or ones that at least maybe in the style that are like they're like pseudo sports games, but not really.
yeah.
Like, because obviously Tony Hawk isn't like a sports game, but it's like that arcadey game where you're just messing around. And so this has that feel to it, which is why, at least for me, since I usually like those kinds of games like Tony Hawk and Jet Set Radio, I very much can see myself coming back to this. I think the maybe the I hesitate to say this is a negative per se, but like I think this game would be awesome for multiplayer, but there is no multiplayer at all, which
Would that be
normally
possible though with the slowdown?
exact. That's the only thing where I think they probably. Well, granted, it's an indie studio, so maybe they didn't want to mess with online to begin with. But if they were able to, that's the one thing I don't think they could implement, or they would probably just have to say like, "Look, it has to go," or maybe unless there's like some special mode, maybe like where only one person has it or something like that. But yeah, not everyone could have it because I can't imagine how the hell that would work. To be honest.
I think it was Max Payne 3 had
Yeah.
like an online mode
hmm
because like everything back then had one. I think the
Right.
way they got around it was anytime you were in eyesight of the person doing the slowdown, it
hmm
also slowed down for you, but otherwise for you it was still normal
hmm
speed.
Yeah, so they could probably figure out a way to make it work. Or honestly, even if they just got rid of it altogether, I think it would still be a fun game to play. Like you don't have to do the slow mo. It just helps in certain areas. So they could probably do it in some way. But once again, I'm not really going to put that. I'm not going to hold that
No.
against this game because that really wasn't their intention. But I could see like they could probably do DLC for this game where maybe they add more stages and stuff like that. But if they just ever came out with a full on sequel, I imagine that's where they could expand it and do like a true maybe online mode. Or something to that effect. And I guess maybe the only other thing I would have liked to see is all of the levels are essentially arenas. I think what it would have been cool is if they actually had more longer levels, like a linear type of level where you're
Hmm.
having to go and explore, kind of. Because once again, like, so almost like a Jet Set Radio, where you are exploring a city more and you're kind of going through all
Hmm.
these interesting areas. I think that would have been a nice way to vary the game up a little bit instead of just everything being an arena, essentially. But once again, if they do a sequel, maybe that's where they could expand it and kind of experiment a little bit more. So right now, I guess the last thing I'll say as well is, I mean, this will go up. I'm not sure when this is going to go up, but at least for the end of August, it's on sale. So normally,
Yeah.
I think the game is $30. I bought it for only $20, but I think that sale is only for another couple days, so it might miss it by the time this episode comes out. But even at $30, I would still say it's worth it. So I like, in general, definitely giving this a thumbs up. I would highly recommend it.
Hmm.
I mean, especially if you like these types of arcadey games, but even if you're just wanting something different, this game stands out to me. Like, when I look at a lot of other games that have come out, like, this is a game I will remember. You know,
I feel like a lot of people are like, oh no, it's just because you're old and you don't understand anymore. But like when like the Dreamcast was about that sort of era, the early 3D times,
yeah,
games were different.
yeah,
Not different to now, but every game felt different as well.
sure, sure.
So I'd be like, oh, I fancy playing Jet Set Radio,
Hmm.
or I want to play Crazy Taxi.
Hmm.
Both completely different feeling games. Or I want to play Shenmue,
Hmm.
or I want to play Quake.
Yeah,
You know, every game felt different. Whereas I feel like even now, like if they're in the same genre, games start to feel the same.
sure. Hmm.
And it's nice to see stuff coming out that, even if I'm not overly interested in it, I'm like,
Sure.
it's nice to see some variety, something a bit different. Because
Well, yeah.
every third person and first person shooter just looks and feels the same.
Well, that's the thing too, is like, because like I said, the kind of drop in, drop out, just playing for 20 minutes thing, like, that does exist today, but you have the same, like, Call of Duty, Battlefield, Fortnite. It's all these shooters, and like, I don't give a shit about
Right,
any of that.
but one of the things that puts me off with stuff like that as well is the fact it's multiplayer. And
Right.
if I drop in the Fortnite, which I've like never played,
Hmm.
I'm gonna lose because there's people who dedicate their life to it.
Yeah, and that's also why in the last few years the recent Doom games are fucking incredible. Yes, there's an
Hmm.
online portion to those games. I've never touched them. I only play the single player, and that's another one where, even though it's a modern Doom, they still break it up into levels, and you can play one level for, 20, 25 minutes and be like, "All right, I'm good for now."
Yeah.
And you get that fun out of it. And so that's where, like, to your point, even with the Dreamcast, even though there were lots of variety of games, there were a lot of those arcadey style games. Like, I'm thinking San Francisco Rush, or like Dynamite Cop, or yeah, Jet Set, Crazy Taxi, like
What's
that,
that,
I think.
Mum? Dinner's gonna be half an hour. Right, I can get a level done. You know.
Yeah, I could get this. I get the high score. I'll be there in 5 minutes. So that's where, like, I think. Which is ironic for me to say, because you're talking to the person who this year beat every From Software game back to back, including Elden Ring, where
Ah, you're
that
part of the
probably.
fucking problem.
Right. Well, but granted, that's a different type of experience as
Yeah.
well, and I love those experiences now. But I really do wish this type of experience, not even to your point, not even just this specific game, but yeah, that type of feeling of game would be nice to see more of. And to be honest, I'm sure there's more of them out there, and it's just a matter of finding them. But like, this particular one just stuck out to me. It was very different. It combined parts of different things I already liked, which, and I think they knew their audience well, which I think
Yeah.
helped with targeting those types of games, like the Tony Hawk and all that sort of stuff. And then for me, on a personal level, cell shaded graphics I just love. Like, not just Jet Set Radio, but like even the game 13, which back in the day was good. And
Wind
this, like, and
Waker.
yeah, Wind Waker, like that. I don't care what console or generation, or however in the future they keep doing cell shaded graphics. It's just so stylized, and I feel like that usually will stand the test of time, as opposed to like the realistic graphics that like very much date something to a specific era.
Yeah.
So this is cell shaded. It looks really cool, and I think it'll always look really good as well. So, but yeah, so it's good.
So, thumbs up.
I would definitely give it a thumbs up. Recommend it for sure.
Okay.
All right, over to you.
So I've been watching Only Murders in the Building, which the second season just finished.
Hmm.
I kind of watched the first season at the beginning of this year and I kind of missed it when it came out
Hmm.
and everyone was raving about it as if it's the best thing ever, and like I think it had like 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and
Yeah.
you know when you quite don't believe something is as good as people are saying, like you've not got any
No.
reason to believe it, but there's just that part of you that's like, it can't be that
Right, right,
good.
right. Exactly.
But before I go into it, I believe you said you watched the first episode
Yeah, I
and
watched
you
episode
enjoyed it.
one. Yeah, episode one when it came out. Episode one of season one when the show premiered, whenever it was, a year or two ago at this point. And I did enjoy it. And I was already like wanting to watch it because of Steve Martin and Martin Short, which legends, always fun to watch them. But I didn't continue it past the first episode, not because I like hated it or something, but I think I just fell to the wayside, and there were other stuff that I watched, and I just never got around to it. I do intend to, I think, get back to it at some point. I just don't know when at this point.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. I
Hmm.
don't think it's like the best show ever.
No.
Like that. Well, I think season two is the highest rated like show on Rotten Tomatoes ever, or something.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm just like, no, no. Like it's
Just
good.
no.
It's good, but come on, let's not be silly,
Yeah.
right? It's really enjoyable. So for those that don't know, it's Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people got put off by the Selena Gomez part,
Yeah, you wouldn't expect
um,
that.
which she's an actress, guys. She can
Hmm.
act different in different things. Yes, she was on
Yeah.
like Disney Channel and dating Justin Bieber,
Right.
but that's not the character she's playing here. Okay.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if Steve Martin and Martin Short aren't enough for you to give this a shot, then I don't know what is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
They all live in a big, like, fancy New York building, and
Hmm.
a murder happens, and they're all obsessed with like murder podcasts, sort of like serial type things. I don't know if you ever
Yeah.
listen to serial.
Hmm.
Um, and then they decide to make their own podcast.
Hmm.
And my biggest complaint about this movie is the fact that they live in a posh New York building, because
Hmm.
they try to make this such a New York show,
Yeah.
but it's not, because it's that posh side of New York. The kind of people that have cocktail parties at art museums.
Yeah, not the people like living in poverty and like barely scraping by.
Yeah, like Seinfeld's like the most New York show because it's people just arguing all the time,
Yeah, that too. Right. Yeah.
right? And this is more them like worrying about what diner to go to eat and stuff like that, and like getting like really trivial stuff. They think the idea of like living in New York is that you have to get in an elevator to get to your apartment. Like
So this show would appeal to the one percenters, is what I'm hearing you say, I think.
it is a show made by the one percenters.
Great. Perfect.
Which, like, don't get me wrong, Steve Martin and Martin Short are like, what, 70, 80? They haven't been poor for like 50 years at this point.
Yeah. They're doing well. They're doing
Yeah,
well.
yeah. But that's it. There's just a sort of smug air to it a little,
Okay.
which doesn't really suit it in a sense, because also at the same time, all the twists in this show are very ham-fisted.
Okay.
Like, they find the evidence at the exact moment, and they like
Yeah.
over-explain stuff. And it's not as smart a show as it thinks it is.
Okay.
Okay. Um, it is enjoyable. It is funny still.
Okay. That's fair.
Okay. Um, I don't think it needed to go for the second season.
I mean, did the first one end like on a cliffhanger or something? I'm
It
assuming.
did, but they'd already wrapped up the first season.
Okay.
And then this one ends on a cliffhanger for the third season.
Well,
I
yeah,
think
you
it would
gotta
have
have them.
been, yeah, because it's really successful. I can see this going for 5 or 6 seasons. And already during the second season, they're making jokes that's like ridiculous,
Yeah.
that the same stuff is happening to them all the time.
I mean, is it just another murder or something that
Yeah,
happens? I'm guessing.
yeah, yeah. It's always just like another murder, and they, as I said, they do joke about it, but the show isn't an outright comedy in the sense that they're like telling jokes. It's more like funny situations,
Sure, sure.
like a Father of the Bride type
Hmm.
Steve Martin movie. That those movies aren't filled with like jokes like American Pie or like Dumb and Dumber. It was
Right.
always like a funny situation that person's in,
Hmm.
and that's what this is. Which makes it feel more ridiculous when murders keep happening around them.
Well, is that like a tone problem, I guess, or
Yeah, because it also thinks it's serious because it's that sort of New York cocktail party crowd as well.
yeah.
They think they're very smart when
Hmm.
it's not as smart a show as it thinks it is.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because, like, well, you can have, I think, with Martin Short, yeah, and Steve Martin, they've been in those movies where they can toe that line fairly well. So I'm wondering, like, do you know, like, with this show, are they like writers on it, or are they even
I know
involved in that
Steve
sense?
Martin created it. I think he's a
Okay.
writer. I don't know about Martin Short though, but I feel like
Okay.
those two do everything together. So he probably
Hmm.
just called him up and was like, "I'm working." I
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of this is improvised. Like just the moments
Okay.
where they're like hanging out in an apartment and talking. I
Yeah.
can imagine like Steve Martin and Martin Short just like bouncing off one another.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
Hmm.
and they do play their characters very well. It's a very believable friendship because, believe it or not, they are friends in real life. And even Selena Gomez like plays off them very well.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
from the one episode I watched of that first season, yeah, even though it's maybe a little unexpected for her to be in this show with them, like she
yeah,
was fine. Like it wasn't she was like a sore thumb sticking out of like, oh my God, she's horrible. Like no, she did
I
fine.
worried about that when I first started watching it. I thought, oh,
Hmm.
okay, like not being fact, you look at it and you think the Hulu CEO was like, look, no one knows Steve Martin and Martin Short anymore. We need like
Right,
some younger talent in this as well. And it would
right, right.
surprise me if they said that and that's why it happened. But she does
Sure.
play off it well.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, no, it's a very enjoyable show. I laugh at least a couple of times each episode.
Sure.
One of the things that really stuck out to me though is the music.
Okay.
Now, I don't think the music is anything special in this,
Hmm.
but like when I watched rewatch Back to the Future with my wife like last year, she'd never seen it, and
Hmm.
there's scenes where just like the music is quite loud
Yeah.
and it's part of the scene,
Hmm.
and I'm like sitting there going, like movies and shows don't do this anymore.
Hmm.
Like
Interesting.
like like Star Wars, like the
Hmm.
original Star Wars, right? The music is a big part of that movie and the
Sure. Everyone
feel of
remembers
it.
John Williams' score, and yeah.
Yeah, E.T. when they fly off in the bikes, the
Hmm.
Harry Potter when they go up to the castle and
Yeah.
stuff like
Exactly.
that. And as I said, I don't think the music in this is great or anything, but it's very identifiable and it's a very big part of the show.
Interesting. Okay.
And like, if you just played it to me, I'd be like, oh yeah, like that's the only murders in the building. Like, it's just always there, like in the background and things like
Like
that,
it's a
right?
theme that keeps repeating, or there's different kinds of
It's just
music.
a type of music. Like, it's just the way it sounds.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, they change it up and stuff, but it's got a
Hmm.
very particular feel to it.
Interesting. All right.
And I kind of have just missed that in movies and shows like the last
Mm-hmm.
20 or odd years because you could be like, oh, here's the theme from the Eternals. And I'd be
Sure.
like, what? Like, this could be any Marvel or DC movie, even. None of those movies have a feel. It's sort of like Batman had it recently.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, it's funny you mention that because, like, some of the shows we've talked about recently, like Westworld, actually is pretty good about having not just a theme song that they've always used, but even within the show, they've sort of done variations on it where you can kind of identify it. And then, like, Better Call Saul has his intro, like, there's the intro to that. I don't know if they
yeah.
ever used it in the episodes per se, but like that intro, I can now remember for Better Call Saul now. Funny
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah. It's more music that's playing during a scene.
Mm.
And part of it's weird because when we just talk in person, there's no
Hmm.
music behind us.
You don't just have your phone playing
Like,
background.
like, But no, it was just I remember watching Back to the Future with my wife, and it's like just Doc and Marty talking,
Right.
and there's like some music just playing really loudly over it, and you're like, this adds so much to the scene.
This used to be a thing. That is funny you would say that. Yeah, I guess I never thought about it. Interesting.
Yeah. And then this show does it, and I'm just like, this has that older feel to it,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Well, I
Uh,
mean, I guess that makes sense with Martin Short and Steve Martin. I mean, they're from that era as well, where that was a thing. So it's not, I guess, that surprising that they would like that. Maybe it's just the norm to them. Like, oh, of course, that's going to be part of it. So
yeah. No,
yeah,
I really enjoy. If you like old like Steve Martin movies,
yeah.
Martin Short movies, I'd say definitely give it a go.
Hmm.
I can't imagine many people hating this show
Sure.
unless the smugness really gets to them
Hmm.
about it. But I enjoyed it. I don't
Yeah.
think it's amazing. I don't think everyone has to go watch it immediately,
Hmm.
like some people were making out.
And once again, that's kind of that's the thing with me is regardless of the fact that I also had other stuff I wanted to watch at the time or whatever, like it's one of those things where I'm pretty sure I would like it if I continued, but there's nothing like compelling me to immediately be like, yeah, that's the next show I'm going to watch. And I don't know
Yeah,
if I don't know if there's a particular reason why, because yeah, I do like Steve Martin's movies and Martin Short. Like one of my favorite movies of all time is The Jerk. Have you ever seen that?
yeah.
Yeah, I
He
fucking
hates
love
these
that movie.
cans.
Yeah, shoot the cans. He's shooting him. Or like Three Amigos with Martin Short's in that,
Yeah.
and like like I definitely love these actors. So I don't know. I think I will get back to it one of these days. I don't know when.
Yeah, but like none of the comedy is even as funny as those. It's very like subtle the comedy in this.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
there's that one of the funniest scenes ever is the Three Amigos where they accidentally shoot the invisible swordsman.
That's
Like,
such a great movie.
but it's just stupid, isn't it? Like,
Yeah, exactly. And granted, to be fair, that this show isn't trying. I'm assuming isn't trying to be that, which is so.
no,
Like, maybe I shouldn't necessarily compare those extremes, I guess. And I'm not even
yeah,
saying I'm expecting that, but it's just, yeah, I don't know. Nothing is like compelling me to immediately watch it, but I do know it's something I want to
yeah.
watch.
But it like I feel like if someone said to me like, "Oh, what's a show I could watch?"
Hmm.
Right? Any recommendations? I feel like
Yeah.
there's like 10 to 20 shows I'd probably recommend that have come out in the last 10 years over this one. And I don't think it's
Yeah.
bad. It's
Right.
just not the one I'm going to be like, you know, watch this.
Yeah, it's so tough because like there's just so much, and we've talked about this before with like obviously all the streaming services and shit coming out nonstop. So like there's just so many things coming out that like if you really don't do something that is like nailing it or is like very unique, it falls to the wayside a little bit. And to your point, it's not even that the show's bad, but it's just like, oh, like yeah, I'll probably laugh. It's got people I've recognized, sure, but like is it really gonna stick out, I guess? So
Yeah.
I don't know, it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, if you just, it's one of those shows I'd feel like saying, if you're in the mood for it, if you
Yeah.
look at it, the little icon on Hulu and you're going, yeah, I'm feeling that right now, then watch
Hmm.
it. You're not going to have a bad time.
Yeah. Hmm.
But I'm not going to be like, go out of your way, watch this, like grab the wife, throw her on the sofa, and say, we're watching this right now. You know, like,
Drop everything you're doing right
yeah,
now.
yeah. I'd give it a thumbs up. I'm going to
Sure.
probably watch the next season,
Hmm.
but I can't say I'm like looking for the trailer for the next season or anything like that.
Yeah. Do you know if have they said it's renewed for another
Yeah,
season
yeah,
or?
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, as
So.
I said as well, like it ends on like a pretty big cliffhanger, and
Hmm.
they've already announced the person who appears at the end is going to be in the next season as well. So
Got it.
yeah.
So are they okay? If you had to take it a different direction to maybe spice it up, could they start like another podcast of something different relating to murders?
Well, I think the issue is the fact they called the show only Murders in the Building.
Sure.
Because if they had changed the name of the show, it could be them podcasting about different stuff.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
obviously they have this big building and stuff. They could have it about like their version of their HOA committing some kind of fraud or something, and like they're investigating that.
Hmm.
Or they could just be like looking into the NYPD or something, like just something stupid.
I mean, to be fair, they could just create a new, not really a new show per se, maybe title it differently,
Yeah,
and
make it like
maybe
limited
like,
series type thing. Yeah,
yeah, almost like maybe not an anthology per se, but like each season is something slightly different. Not like quite, not like American Horror Story where it's like a completely, like maybe it's the same actors, but it's a completely different story. Like, no, you can
mm.
continue the story, but maybe like instead of only murders in the building, only
Only fraud in the building. Like
only for,
just
yeah, there we go. Yeah, there we go. So like you can kind of still keep the same alliteration maybe of the title, but maybe like just spice it up a little bit. Because yeah, like how many more fucking times are they gonna probably find dead bodies or something like that? But then again, I guess we'll see in the next
okay,
season.
thumbs up.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Yeah, like I said, one of these days, I do intend to check it out. I don't know when. I don't know what year, or even what decade, but one of these days I will. So anyways, but yeah, so with that, we had some good recommendations today, Rollerdrome and Unholy Murders in the Building. So definitely check them out. If you've played or watched either of these, let us know down below so you can tell us what you think too. And as always, feel free to recommend if there's anything you think we should check out. So with that, make sure to comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. And we will see you on the next one. Cool.
All
Take it
right,
easy,
bye.
guys.